Get cool stuff for what you were going to do anyway. Drink beer. With Buy Beer, Get Gear from Labatt, you can just snap a photo of your receipt and upload it to the website to rack up points for exclusive merch. Get points for every purchase, whether you're grabbing a pint on draft, a case for a party, or a tall boy at the stadium. Any size, any product, anywhere you buy Labatt. Buy beer, get gear. Sign up now at rewards.labattusa.com.
Hey, Dabo Sweeney, congrats. I got you in, baby.
This is entertainment. People pay to watch this.
Pass to a cutting Hiltz. He darts in.
Whoa! People actually subscribe.
All across central New York.
Time expired! Syracuse has done it!
It's Drive Time with your host, Tim Leonard.
Hey, guess what? I'm getting wide. Hey!
We welcome you into Drive Time. 1 hour of Syracuse sports talk coming your way as we creep closer to the Orange and the Tigers down in Death Valley on Saturday. Biggest game of the Orange football season to date. Week 4 matchup against the Clemson team that is slumping right now. And as Dabo Sweeney ranting in his press conferences once again. Phone lines open throughout much of the show today. We will catch up with Chris Brown of the Bills Radio Network, Bills play-by-play man. We'll chat with Chris in about 15 minutes or so. Dive into what to make of the Bills' 2-0 start to the season. They will be playing tomorrow night, Thursday night football game for Buffalo. Another night game at home for Buffalo. They'll take on the Miami Dolphins, look to beat up on another AFC East opponent tomorrow night. So we'll chat with Chris Brown, talk all things Bills in our second segment today. Gonna do a little ACC power rankings, and we welcome your thoughts on Syracuse football and their game against Clemson or anything else on your mind. If you want to talk about Adam Sandler, who's back in town, he's got a show tonight. He was just balling with the Cuse basketball team, apparently, and was over at Mello. I love Adam Sandler. He's always repping Syracuse and is always looking for a pickup game. So 315-437-7644 is always the phone number to call. That's 4ESPN44. And as we get the show rolling today, we're going to do a full scouting report on Clemson. I've really dove into the numbers here over the past couple hours. And I got to say, the more I look into Clemson, the more I'm confused by how the heck they've been playing this poorly. It is a rare case of a team returning a ton of production, a ton of proven production, and struggling out of the gates to this degree. Clemson is 1-2 on the season, and you can make a case like Dabo Sweeney laid out in his press conference of 55 minutes yesterday that they've only lost to two good teams by one possession. But it's kind of more of the same of what we've seen from Clemson to start seasons in the last 3, 4, 5 years. Since the transfer portal era has become a thing and Clemson really hasn't leaned into it, they have been declining as a program. And we know that they've gotten off to slow starts in the past, and they have rallied out of these holes because they do have a great culture and they do have a great head coach and Dabo Sweeney, who is telling everyone this week that he's not done. He's only 55 years old, and he's just figuring this thing out. But I am a little worried about the spot of this game for Syracuse. And when I say that, I mean this is a young Orange team. They're going down to a hostile environment. They have not played in an environment like this. A lot of the starters for Syracuse are going to be out there against a top 25-ish team. I know Clemson is no longer ranked, but still a talented team in a hostile environment for the first time. This is the first true road game of the year. It's the first outdoor game of the year. And as much as I don't really buy into Clemson loss, that's actually worse for Syracuse. The fact that they lost to Georgia Tech is going to make them hungrier. I just more worried that Clemson at some point is going to figure this thing out. When you look at their stats, when you look at what they return, literally they return the most production of anyone in the country this season. They return pretty much everyone on offense except for their running back Phil Maffa. And Adam Randall, a converted wide receiver, is now their running back, and he's done a fairly nice job at moving the ball on the ground. He's averaging 5.1 yards per rush. So you return a quarterback that was supposed to be a Heisman frontrunner. And I've never really been a huge Cade Klubnik fan. I always felt like he got some empty calorie stats against bad teams, and that inflated our perception of him. He came in as a really highly regarded recruit. And whenever you watch him in big moments in big games, he did have a couple nice plays last year. The Pitt game, he salvaged it with a big rushing touchdown. The SMU game in the ACC championship, he played pretty well. They hit that big field goal at the end after they almost blew the game to SMU. And he even played, I thought, pretty well against Texas. And it was really that Texas game that gave everyone optimism, that college football playoff game where Clemson put up 24 points, which doesn't seem like a lot, but that was a lot last year against a really good Texas defense. And Klubnik had one of his better performances that got the eyes of the NFL scouts. But when you dig into the numbers on him, he has been really good against bad teams, and he's been really good against the low-end ACC teams. And he hasn't been all that good against anyone outside of the ACC that's Power 4. A lot of SEC opponents on his schedule, and since he has been the quarterback, now third year as the starter for Clemson, have given him fits. Right now, Cade Klubnik in his career against ACC opponents has 39 passing touchdowns compared to 9 interceptions. 39 TDs through the air, 9 interceptions, 8 rushing TDs against ACC opponents. Against the SEC, which remember, Clemson was 0-3 against the SEC last year. They lost their 4th straight game to the SEC in week 1 at home to LSU, in a game where they only put up 17 points. And Klubnik struggled. Against the SEC, Cade Klubnik in his career has 3 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. So way more games against the ACC, 1 less interception in all the games that he's played against the SEC. 8 picks, 3 touchdowns compared to a 39-9 ratio against ACC competition. Completion percentage drops from 63% in conference games for Cade Klubnik to 60% against the SEC. The stat that has been going around this week, courtesy of David Hale, is Clemson quarterbacks against Power 5 competition or Power 4 competition. Their record, Trevor Lawrence was 31-2 against Power Conference competition. Deshaun Watson, 28-3. Cade Klubnik has the worst record of anyone in the Dabo Swinney era. He is 15-11 as the starting quarterback for Clemson against Power Conference competition. So you dig into the numbers and you wonder, why is Cade Klubnik playing this poorly this year? He has 3 touchdown passes, 3 interceptions through 3 games. 59% completion percentage. Again, yes, it was empty calories last year. They scored 62 against App State. NC State's defense was awful. The following week, they had 59 points. But he started the ACC schedule last year, albeit an easy ACC schedule. Still, he started, and it was like 300, 400 yards every single game from Cade Klubnik. And they didn't even move the ball that well against Troy this year. Well, one thing that you notice is he's getting blitzed way more this season. According to Pro Football Focus, Klubnik was blitzed last year 33% of his dropbacks. He was pressured on 31%. This year, he has been blitzed 51% of the time, up from 33% last year. He's been pressured on 36%. That's a pretty high number. And LSU, week 1, really set the game plan in motion. This is something that we will discuss with Adam Terry tomorrow, how you can tell that LSU laid down the foundation of we're going to blitz a ton. And actually it was 67% of the time in week 1, LSU blitzed Clemson's quarterback, Cade Klubnik. And he was under duress the entire game, and he played a really poor game, kind of once again on a national spotlight against an SEC team. So there's 2 ways to look at this game, and this is the question that is on everyone's mind right now. Is Clemson just bad, and we haven't admitted that this has been a decline for a while? And there are some stats to support that. Even last year, you can think back, and they barely beat SMU with that field goal, almost gave away that game. The Pitt game, It took the Klubnik 50-yard rushing touchdown with under 2 minutes left to salvage that game. And you go through their schedule, and it's like whenever they played a good defense last year, they didn't look good on offense. So were they just overinflating their offensive stats because they had a soft stretch in the early to middle part of their schedule last season? And this is 3 straight years of Clemson under Dabo Swinney not matching up like they used to against SEC opponents. I mean, they used to be dominating ACC teams and then winning most of their games against SEC teams. And that was Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson, and this is not that. So there's a lot of stats to support Clemson is just declining, and we've kind of had blinders on to the situation. And I can sort of get behind that, but I can't get behind them being this bad. And the numbers don't add up right now. Clemson has NFL players on this roster all throughout. Antonio Williams is one of them, the wide receiver, who got hurt in the 5th play of the season against LSU and has not returned since. And if you're a Syracuse fan, you really hope that he does not return. Not to root for injuries or anything like that, but he's a guy that seemingly might be a catalyst for their offense to figure it out. And I do believe Clemson's offense is going to figure it out at some point. And it does worry me that Syracuse might not be a great defense, to put it mildly, from what we've seen. And Clemson has looked really good against not great defenses in the last 2-3 years with Cade Klubnik. He has put up good numbers at home against a defense that fits into the statistical profile of a Syracuse. That's the concern with the spot of this game, that maybe this is the game where Clemson, with all their puzzling stats right now, does figure this thing out. And if you're Syracuse, you really hope that's not the case, but the timing of it is tough. This is a young Orange team, and this is going to be a tall assignment. So we'll continue to break down this matchup throughout the week. I'll have my full prediction on our Friday show. We're here with you until 6 p.m. tonight. We'll take our first break on the program, and when we come back, we'll talk Buffalo Bills with our guy Chris Brown, the play-by-play man of the Buffalo Bills. So that's on the other side. Then we'll open up the phone lines for your calls throughout the rest of the show today. Thanks for tuning in. This is Drive Time on ESPN Radio and QSportsTalk.com.
Burdick Toyota.
Anyone going to Adam Sandler tonight? I've never seen him live, but I'm sure he's great. He's always repping Cuse, I feel like. What's up, Super Cat? I got to pay attention to the YouTube chat. We've been neglecting the YouTube chat. Phil's decided to watch on YouTube now. You think Clemson's this year's Florida State? That would be nice. I mean, the thing about Florida State last year is the offensive line was just so bad. Clemson has just been like weirdly bad in all areas right now. And it's really the offense that makes, like, they came in with these great receivers, great offensive line in theory, great quarterback in theory, and everything's just like meh for them. And it's added up to Klubnik not being good and the offense having some costly turnovers and just not moving the ball. But it's possible. I mean, we did not think at this point last year Florida State was going to win 2 games. Obviously didn't think it at the start of the year. I don't think that Dabo is going to lose the locker room as much as maybe Florida State. It just seemed like they quit. But, you know, that would be a first really under Dabo. They've rallied out of these holes before. Who's coming out to the Labatt watch party? Gio and Mike's Shaughnessy's Irish Pub on Saturday. Yeah, San Diego Cuse, they blitzed quite a bit against Colgate. 50% of the time against Colgate, they blitzed after it was 67% week 1 against Tennessee and then only 25% week 2 against UConn. But Syracuse is blitzing 47% of the time through 3 weeks after they only blitzed 22% of the time last year. Those are all PFF numbers, but that's what it's added up to this point. Yeah, Clemson's fan base has been complaining a lot about the cushions their cornerbacks have been given the wide receivers. And Dabo said that in his presser. He said they were too soft on the perimeter and on the outside. I don't think Dabo had another one. I hope a 55-minute press conference is all we see of him. I guess he does that every week. I don't understand how he has the time for that. What's up, Kev?
At 1440 a.m. Watch your favorite ESPN Syracuse sports talk shows on QSportsTalk.com.
Welcome back into Drive Time with Tim Leonard. Orange football in action on Saturday, taking on Clemson. We've been talking about the big game throughout the week. Sneaking in some basketball thoughts as well, as we're under 40 days from the exhibition opener for Orange basketball. Right now, let's talk a little Buffalo Bills as we have our weekly guest, Chris Brown, the Bills play-by-play man, joining us now, and you can watch him on QSportsTalk.com whenever he is on with us. And Chris, nice start for the Bills, 2-0. I guess they've done it in kind of different ways here with an offensive-led performance in week 1 and then shored up the defense, it seemed like, in week 2. What's been the most impressive part about the start here and getting off to a nice 2-0 start to the season?
Well, it looks like their point-producing power kind of picked up right where it left off. I mean, 12 games at 30 points or more last year. And they're right back there again, and they did it in 2 very different ways through these first 2 weeks. You know, week 1, obviously, they find themselves behind. They've got to air it out and pretty much go 2-minute mode for the entire second half. And you look up at the end of the game, and they got 41 points on the board. And then last week, Josh Allen barely does anything, doesn't account for any touchdowns, and they win by 20 on the road and put 30 on the board at the end. So it just seems like hanging 30 points on people is very matter of fact for them. That's probably the thing that carries the day through these first 2 weeks.
Yeah, was that nice to see? I know sometimes the Superman narrative is out there about Josh Allen, and he does so much, and it's still not enough sometimes. Well, as you said, last week, didn't account for any touchdown. He left a couple plays with a nose injury, but you saw some great runs from James Cook. Is that encouraging, you think, for Bills fans that you're still putting up 30 points and it wasn't a Josh Allen touchdown fest last week?
Yeah, I think that's kind of where this team has matured the last season plus. They have other ways to beat you now. It's not just the Josh Allen show. And I got to believe for a lot of opponents in the NFL, that's got to be pretty scary. As a matter of fact, on my show here in Buffalo today, Steve Tasker, my co-host, and I just put a poll up saying, how do you expect the Bills to attack the Dolphins, run game, pass game, or it doesn't matter? And the vote that won was it doesn't matter, which I think is an accurate reflection of where fans are right now. I think they're resolutely believing in this offense that it can do anything it wants, whenever it wants, however it wants. And if the defense can just be a little bit above average or better, you got a Super Bowl contender on your hands that is legit.
Well, obviously more reason to be optimistic about the defense after week 2. Did you notice anything different from a scheme standpoint, or what was working in week 2 that wasn't working in week 1? Because the Jets moved the ball great in week 1, and I'm sure a lot of Bills fans were worried it was going to be a repeat performance on the ground from what they saw from the Ravens in week 1, but they definitely cleaned things up defensively.
Yeah, they did. I think it was twofold. First, I think the Ravens offense is a machine, and I think they're going to steamroll a lot of people, like they did on the Bills defense in week 1. I think also the lack of time on the field for some of their younger players on the defensive side of the ball kind of put them behind the 8 ball in week 1. I'm thinking of players like Cole Bishop, Dorian Strong, who's a rookie 6th-round pick who had to play in the absence of Tre'Davious White. So you had some players, and not to mention the fact that Coach McDermott made the conscious decision to not have his starters play a whole lot in the preseason. It's very hard to go from a practice setting, no matter how competitive it is, to live regular season football and, be on time or anticipate anything and everything. So I think that 1 week ramp up to week 2 helped. And then I think the Jets just aren't the same kind of offense in terms of the dangers they can present. And I think Justin Fields is a limited quarterback. So I think you roll all that together, better alignment, better assignment, better execution, and you had a better defensive effort overall in week 2.
Is there any part of the defense that you feel like is going under the radar right now, or a position group that maybe has impressed you? And I guess this could apply to the entire team as well, offense included, but 2 games in, not a huge sample size, but is there anything that maybe is going under the radar about this Bills team right now?
I think it's Buffalo's usage of the tight ends. They've got a 5th-round rookie in Jackson Hawes out of Georgia Tech that they like a lot. Offensive line coach Aaron Kromer said he's the best blocking tight end I have ever seen. And Aaron Kromer has coached for over 25 years, and they're not afraid to use him either. He's a smart kid. He's Georgia Tech by way of Yale. And he's really got his head on straight. And I think he's a little underrated. He's a little bit of a sneaky athlete, too. He's not just a typical inline wide tight end. He can do a few other things. But Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator, his usage of 13 personnel, 22 personnel with Reggie Gilliam as the fullback, they've used that a lot through the first 2 games. And it's part of the reason why they can line up and play power football and steamroll teams and not just throw it all over the yard with Josh Allen's arm. So it's really diversified the attack here in the early going. And it wouldn't surprise me if they turn to that in several other games, further down the line on the schedule.
Yeah, they have a good ability right now, it seems like, to go to that 13 personnel, and pretty much everyone in the stadium, pretty much everyone on the opponent probably knows it's most likely going to be a run play, and they've still been very effective in those situations, it seems like, right?
Yeah, last week they ran the same run play like 4 or 5 times in a row in the second half when, they were just coasting at that point. They were already up 30-3. And I think Joe Brady's like, well, why am I going to use my whole game plan today? I'm going to leave some stuff in the bag, especially with a short week coming up where we're not going to be able to rep new stuff terribly much in the practice setting. So let me leave some of this stuff that we did get to physically rep in the practice week leading up to the Jets game. And maybe we just review that and save it for the Dolphins, provided that personnel-wise it works in terms of the opponent we're facing. So I think there were some things. And the other thing about the power football stuff, we all remember how they used Alec Anderson as a 6th offensive lineman in a jumbo package. They've barely used that and fallen in favor of, 13 and 12 personnel. But I think there's still a place for that within the scope of this offense as well. So you roll that together, and there are a lot of power packs that they can turn to and play old school football if they want. It's a nice thing to have as a pivot if maybe for some reason a really good pass defense and you want to switch gears.
Chris Brown of the Bills Radio Network, Bills play-by-play man, is with us. It'll be a Thursday night game, another home night game for the Bills in Week 3. They'll be taking on the Dolphins tomorrow night. Anytime it's a Thursday night game, you kind of figure that some of these injuries we've seen throughout the week, you might just hold those guys back and not rush them for a Thursday night game. I saw today Ed Oliver out for the game. Matt Milano is out as well. I guess that's to be expected. Anything we should be worried about on that front injury-wise? And I guess included in that is Josh Allen. It sounds like he's going to be using a visor, right, tomorrow night? Is that what you're expecting?
Yeah, I think the reason for that is just so he doesn't get poked in the nose, and some at him. So just kind of protect the nose so he doesn't take another shot to it this week. And I would say the good news on Milano is Coach McDermott said it's not a long-term injury, so he could be back. I mean, he even hinted that he might have not happened. They erred on the side of caution there, but I think there's a real opportunity for him to be back in the lineup as soon as next week against the Saints. Or Oliver sounds more of a multi-week injury, so he's going to have to keep tabs on that going forward. And I think Taron Johnson, who's listed as questionable, it looks like he's ready to return to the lineup, which is important, knowing that his backup Cam Lewis got a little ding last week, filling him again. So I think they'd be welcoming Taron Johnson, their top nickel cornerback with open arms. So I think he's going to go tomorrow night.
All right. Good to know, Chris. You're cutting out a little bit, but we'll let you go. Good to catch up with you and get the scoop of the Bills as they play tomorrow night against the Dolphins, and we'll chat with you next week, hopefully after another win for the Bills.
All right, sounds good to you.
All right, that is Chris Brown of the Bills Radio Network, Bills play-by-play man. So lost him a little bit at the end there, but it seems like the injury report, nothing to worry about too much for the Bills. And Josh Allen, I don't think we know if it is a broken nose or it's not a broken nose. It looked really rough at the end of the game when he was doing the press conference, just how much he took a hit to the nose and how much his nose was swollen. But I guess he's going to be rocking the visor tomorrow night, which will be the first time he's used one of those. And I'm sure it won't change things too much for the Bills and Josh Allen. But they've got the Dolphins tomorrow night, which is always an opportunity to beat up on an AFC East opponent. And the Dolphins do not look very good through 2 weeks. Bills off to a nice start, and we'll catch up with Chris Brown each and every week here on Drive Time. Keep you updated on the Buffalo Bills as they look to get back to the Super Bowl, or get back to the AFC Championship game, I guess I should say, this season. We'll hit a break here. Phone lines open throughout the rest of the show this afternoon. 315-437-7644 is the phone number to call. If you have thoughts on Q's football, give a ring, and we can work you in out of this timeout on QSportsTalk.com and ESPN Radio.
Did you miss Drive Time with
the connection was pretty rough for you guys too, right? He was started out good, and then last couple questions he was glitching out pretty good. Vermont or VTech? Man, Virginia Tech had all these good players, Gio. Why have they been bad at football? Is that Brent Pry's fault? The coaching staff was not up to par. Yeah, I think that's a mild way of putting it. 1-12 in one-score games for Brent Pry. I was looking, Clemson used to be unbelievable in one-score games. Start of the Dabo era. Where did I had the stats somewhere. I think they were 18-4. Yeah, 2015 to 2020, so not really the start of the era, but when they were in their heyday, They're 18-4 in one possession games, best record in the country. 13-9 since then, so since 2020. Still a pretty good record, but 18-4 is almost unsustainably good. Brand's 8-2 though. So Syracuse has been good in one-score games as well. Yeah, it seems, I just saw a tweet that people were talking about how, like, I don't know if you guys were watching Orange Nation, the Clemson beat writer we had on, Will Vandervoot, I think was his name. He predicted Syracuse to win the game, sort of surprisingly. It seems like everyone in Clemson is dumbfounded by the 17.5 point spread, kind of like everyone up here is. I don't know if that gives me a ton of confidence. Watch party Saturday, Jen. Throw down at Shaughnessy's or else Steve's fired, right? That's what Paulie said. Paulie should have phrased it, throw down at Shaughnessy's or else I'm fired. Then, or actually, throw down at Shaughnessy's and then I'll get fired. May have gotten the most people. Paulie phrased it that way. Yeah, I'm sure most people are going to be betting Syracuse, would be my guess. Yeah, I will be here, but I've got to be in Galaxy working, Gio. So I don't know. Maybe I sneak out to Shaughnessy's, come back. It's probably not possible. I can't really miss the game, and I got to talk during halftime about it. So the one day that I'm here in Galaxy for the game, and we could have been watching it together with the Galaxy crew, the Galaxy crew is not here. So I'll just be watching the game in Galaxy by myself. Well, everyone's having I'll be watching the game and watching the watch party, maybe. Yeah. Fire Paulie party. That's true. Paul will be here. We'll try and teach him how to tie his shoes. Although, is Paul here or does he have to watch Indy at that point? Who knows if Paulie's going to keep Paul on Indy duty after the conversation today. Well, hopefully you can watch the watch party at work, Kev, and pretend to be working. Welcome back to Drive Time. Talking Orange football today. Just wrapped up our conversation with Chris Brown of the Buffalo Bills radio network. Bills in action tomorrow night. Houston action Saturday, noon kick. Back-to-back nooners for the Orange. They'll be back at home next week to take on Duke. Looks like that'll be a sellout for Parents Weekend. Duke 1-2 on the season. Clemson 1-2. And those are a couple of the ACC teams that have been underwhelming to this point in the season. As we try to do once a week, I'm now going to dive into my ACC football tiers and try and power rank everyone in the conference and group them into tiers to this point as we have gone through 3 weeks of the college football season. And keep in mind as I go through this that some of these teams that are on Syracuse's schedule have significantly slipped in terms of what our expectation was, what they were projected to finish in the ACC preseason poll, to where they sit right now in the power rankings. So for my ACC tiers this week, we begin with the top dogs in the conference that happen to be the Florida schools in the ACC. I still have Miami as the best team in the conference right now. They looked dominant against USF, which is something that shouldn't mean much in most years, but this year it does because USF had already beat Florida. They were a ranked team, and Miami completely clobbered them over the weekend. So, honestly, Miami has as good of a resume as anyone in the country to this point. I still can't get 100% all in on Miami because of the Mario Cristobal of it all, because of the years and years of mounting evidence that Miami is never going to actually get over the hump, even though we talk ourselves into them or the collective media talks themselves into Miami at this point of the season several years in a row. But you can't rank anyone ahead of Miami right now. They really need to get a win for the ACC this weekend. It's College game day at home against Florida. They're 3-point favorites. It would not be a good look for the ACC if their top dog, their best team, lost to a Florida team that has already lost to USF and is probably going to be a middle-of-the-road to back-end SEC team based on what we've seen. They clobbered Florida last year. It would be very nice for the ACC. I'm sure Jim Phillips and everyone in the ACC offices would breathe a sigh of relief if Miami could take care of Florida this weekend. That is College game day on Saturday. Also in the top tier is Florida State. And I also don't really love them, but they beat Alabama, and Alabama's looked pretty much like Alabama since then, or about as much as you would think they would look like Alabama. They took care of Wisconsin. Florida State hasn't played anyone since then. They had a bye this past week. I'm still not 100% in on Florida State either, but I got to rank some teams at the top here, and I think you have to put Miami and Florida State as the top two teams in the league right now. Our next tier, 3 through 5 in the ACC, we have coined pretty good with the right schedule. Schedule matters a lot nowadays, and that's why Indiana made the playoff last year. That's why SMU won the ACC championship, or got to the ACC championship game, and then got to the college football playoff last year. The schedule is way too important because there's 17 friggin' teams in the ACC spread out all over the country. And they got to figure out a way, college football as a whole, to make it so that there's not as big of a gap in what Syracuse's schedule is, which is the hardest schedule you can possibly have in the ACC, and say what Georgia Tech and Cal have right now from a schedule standpoint. Teams in the good with the right schedule tier. Georgia Tech number 3 in my conference rankings this week. Georgia Tech's schedule has really set up for them after the nice win over Clemson. They are in a very comfortable spot here the rest of the way to be in the thick of the ACC title, ACC championship game conversation. The key for them is really the same thing that we said when Syracuse had Eric Dungy. It's, can Haynes King stay healthy? Haynes King was phenomenal against Clemson. They didn't run the ball exceptionally well, but on third down, when they needed Haynes King to get him a couple yards, it just felt inevitable. Georgia Tech was 8 for 15 on third down against Clemson. Third down defense has been a big weakness for the Tigers through 3 weeks. And Syracuse has not looked great on third down until the last game against Colgate. That is going to be a key stat going into the matchup on Saturday. Who does well on third down when you consider both teams have kind of struggled, the Orange offense and the Clemson defense? Also in the good with the right schedule tier, at number 4 is NC State. I don't really think NC State's the 4th best team in the conference, but I think they're only going to continue to rise up these rankings. I see them starting the season 6-0. I think CJ Bailey's a very good quarterback, and right now, their toughest game in their next stretch is this week against Duke. They are underdogs to Duke on the road. If they win that game, all of a sudden people are going to be talking about, could NC State have a path to the ACC championship game because they have the easy schedule. Their schedule is way more backloaded, though. So with them, it's more, they're just going to tease us and be like Pittsburgh of last year and maybe start out 6-0, and then I could see them falling off from there. I don't think they have a good enough defense. Also in this tier, good teams with the right schedule. We've got Cal. Their schedule is a complete joke, and they already have a nice power conference win, somewhat nice power conference win over Minnesota. The ACC right now, I'd have to think, is hoping that Cal does not run the table or lose just one game and make it to the championship game. Because, again, they have the Indiana or SMU path that they had last year. And they've got a really fun quarterback. They got to make all these road trips, so I'm not really expecting it to happen. I think they'll stub their toe. But, man, their schedule is almost easier than Georgia Tech, so you have to at least put them in the conversation based on how they've started. They're clearly improved from last year, and their schedule is a joke. So we've named Miami and Georgia Tech as Syracuse opponents so far. Next tier, teams 6 through 8 in the conference, I have labeled they might be bad, and they also have the wrong schedule, which, again, schedule matters way too much nowadays. Louisville hasn't played anyone, but I have them at the top of this tier as the 6th best team right now in the ACC. Their schedule is only looking tougher and tougher. Road games for Louisville in conference are at Miami, at SMU, at Virginia Tech, at Pitt. Obviously, Virginia Tech doesn't look tough. Sorry, Gio. But Miami and SMU do look tough. Pittsburgh on the road is still going to be a fairly tough game for Louisville, and their home schedule isn't much easier. Clemson at home, Cal at home as well, who looks tougher than we thought. Boston College and Virginia are not complete rollovers at home, so they don't really even have like a Wake or a Stanford. They've got a fairly tough ACC schedule, and I just couldn't really put them any higher than 6 because we don't know what Louisville is to this point in the season, really. And they didn't look that great against James Madison, the one game where you could glean anything. We'll get to Mark in New York City in just a second. To finish up the ACC tiers, the mediocre middle, we'll get to that. First, I got to mention the other teams in the might be bad with the wrong schedule. You got Clemson as well, because we've talked about we don't really know what to make of Clemson. I have them 7 right now. Clemson's got a pretty tough schedule, too. SMU is also in this group for me because they've got a tough schedule, and I don't really know what to make of SMU. So I have them 8. So that's another orange opponent. Clemson and SMU 7 and 8 in these ACC rankings. Mediocre middle, we've got Syracuse, Pittsburgh, Duke, and Virginia. Pittsburgh had the bad loss this week to West Virginia, blew the lead of 10 points. Duke, I think we're making a little bit too much of the loss to Tulane because they were underdogs in that game. They were kind of supposed to start the season 1-2, but Duke really needs a win this week against NC State. Virginia, I almost put in the next tier, but their quarterback, I think, actually is pretty good, Chandler Morris. Next tier after that, teams 13 through 15 in the conference, we are labeling the ex-NFL coaches tier. That is Stanford with Frank Reich, who got the big win over BC this past week. BC with Bill O'Brien, who lost to Stanford on the road, sort of surprisingly. And then, of course, UNC and Bill Belichick. I think they're going to lose this week to UCF, and UNC just doesn't look good. Final 2 tiers, team 16 in the conference. I'm labeling Almost Forgot About You. That goes to Wake Forest. Not much to say about them. And then 17, last but not least, is Virginia Tech. They are in the dumpster fire tier after having to fire their coach Brent Pry and getting down 31-0 to Old Dominion at home. They are 0-3 on the season. Let's go to the phone lines. We've got Mark in New York City. What's up today, Mark?
Hey, Tim. How you doing? I'm going back to look at the Tim Leonard's top 5 Syracuse football players and just looking at this list.
Yeah.
In 1 to 5 order. You have Basine Willis, Devin Grant, Jonte Cook, David Reese, Justice Ross Simmons. A couple notable names I just want to, and my ultimate question is are you going to revisit that list and reevaluate it? Because, not on that list is the quarterback that's leading the nation in passing yards with Steve Angeli.
Right.
You also have the tight end that I think is number 2 in receiving yards, and Dan Villari, who I think is not getting talked about enough, how great he's been this year. And then you have Darryl Gill, who is like top 10 or 15 in receiving yards this year. So those are 3 big names that have been crucial in these 2 wins. And they were left off your list. So I'm just curious if you're going to reevaluate that list at some point.
Yeah, I should keep a running list throughout the season where I go back and change it, I feel like. I think at some point in the coming weeks, I'll re-rank them. Obviously, game by game, it's going to change a little bit. I think the problem with the list that so far, 1, 2, and 3, and I believe it was Willis, then I said Devin Grant, and then Jonte Cook as the top 3. All 3 of those guys have been banged up. I mean, Willis at least probably wasn't 100% throughout much of the UConn game, and then we know he didn't play last week. Devin Grant hasn't played the last 2 weeks. Jonte Cook, I don't think has been 100% since maybe the first half of the Tennessee game, which was the best half he's played. So, given the injuries right now, it feels like Darryl Gill and Justice Ross Simmons have almost jumped ahead of Jonte Cook and Dan Villari. I think you're right. It was tough for me to leave Villari off the list at that point as well. But when I made that list, I think it was just off of the Tennessee game, and there wasn't reason yet to jump in on Steve Angeli. And honestly, I'm a little worried we might be overreacting to just the Colgate performance from him because he did get protection. And the question with Angeli is, can he stay up near the nation's leading and passing yards if he's not getting protection? And I think we're going to find out another game this week. We're going to find out just how good the offensive line is and just how good Steve Angeli is. All right, that is Mark in New York City. How would you rank the list, I guess, is another way to phrase it, because it's tough. I mean, I agree with him. Dan Villari is a guy that probably should be in the conversation right now, or at least should be top 5 when you look at his stats. But those guys in the top 3, I think, are 3 of the best players on the team. They just haven't really done much from a statistical standpoint because of the injuries, and they've all missed some time, or with the case of Grant, he's missed 2 games, and with Yasin Willis, he has missed a game so far. We'll hit our final timeout on the show tonight. When we come back, phone line's still open. If you have a thought, 315-437-7644. Want to dive into the series history against Clemson and what to make of how the Orange have fared when they've been in a similar spot spread-wise to what they are this week. 17.5-point underdogs to Clemson. That's next on ESPN Radio and QSportsTalk.com.
This Saturday, join
Yeah, Gio is our producer. That's the plan. He'll be here every afternoon. I guess normally, Gio, we put like who it is when it's Q Sports Talk, but people will figure it out. It's going to be Gio on my show. Oh, Mr. McCoy, look at you in the chat. Shouldn't you be sleeping or eating a McDonald's quarter pounder or something? Maybe you're doing that and listening. That'd be quite the Paul McCoy special. Hookie trivia should give it away, yeah. And Bill's chatter, for that matter. Going to McDonald's right now, yeah. That's the most predictable thing ever. They probably know your name at this point. Pull up to the drive-thru and they see your car and they're like, oh, is it the regular tonight, Mr. McCoy? Josh Allen does seem like a good dude. Let's see, I'm neglecting the YouTube chat. Oh, Gio even put the trivia in the YouTube chat. Oh, Miles White. I don't know who he would have caught that from. Was he trying to remember what teams he played for? If you're asking, it's got to be a big name. Would it be like Aaron Rodgers, maybe? Velcro's cholesterol is off the charts. The key for me is going to be when I'm here Saturday and Paul's in the studio, not eating McDonald's, because that would not be good for me or anyone. Yeah, I haven't seen CBW. I honestly didn't even know Adam Sandler was coming. That slipped my mind, or I never registered with me. Now I'm going to look up this Miles White with the acknowledgement that I'm sure I didn't get it right. He seems like a good guy, though. Game logs, Miles White, career. Touchdowns. 1 TD came for the Giants in 25th. This has to be Eli Manning, right? Is it Nassib? That'd be funny. Miles White from Ryan Nassib. Wow. 25 yards in garbage time. I didn't know that. That's a good trivia. Shout out Ryan Nassib. Yeah, tech should hire Gio. Well, he can't pursue a career in tying his shoelaces, so. I don't even know, like, Paul, I don't know if we've ever straight up talked about this. Like, have you attempted to tie your shoes? Have you just given up? I mean, is this just a personality trait for you at this point? I have a lot of questions. I'm scared to ask, but now I'm asking. Just lost my water bottle.
100.1. Watch live on QSportsTalk.com.
Final segment of the show tonight. We can work in a phone call. If you call right now, 315-437-7644. Tim Leonard with you on Drive Time, 5 to 6 p.m. Taking you up until the top of the hour. We'll have Adam Terry join us tomorrow, another one of our weekly guests. Adam will be on the call for the Learfield broadcast as always, down in Clemson on Saturday. Do want to remind you, if you're here in Syracuse for that Clemson-Syracuse road game, then what you need to do is head on out to Shaughnessy's Irish Pub on Saturday, because the watch party is happening out there all game long, all morning long, really. Pre-game starts at 10 a.m. Doors open to Shaughnessy's at 9 a.m. Our Labatt Blue watch party, Giovanni Heater, pre-game with Mike McAllister. You can check that out in person. You can put a couple of bats back early in the morning and just get in the spirit, get in the mood, and then watch Syracuse football at Shaughnessy's. Great place to watch the game. We'll be having a watch party out there. We're giving away season tickets for SU and ACC men's basketball tournament tickets for the 2026 upcoming men's basketball tournament as well. Post-game will be happening live from Shaughnessy's. You can just stay throughout the day and enjoy some radio coverage, enjoy chilling with the great Giovanni Heater and Mike McAllister. Also, if you're not able to go out to Shaughnessy's, our watch party will be streaming live on our Q Sports Talk Twitch stream. So what better way to enjoy Clemson and Syracuse than our Labatt watch party on Saturday? Pre-game coverage starting at 10 a.m. from Shaughnessy's Irish Pub, downtown Syracuse. Hopefully, it'll be another one of these memorable Clemson-Syracuse games where you remember where you were watching it from. I went back through the series history today and tried to make sense of how good Syracuse has been when they have been big underdogs to Clemson, which pretty much every time they play Clemson, they're big underdogs. That's how it is for most teams. The Orange, remember, didn't play Clemson last year. Schedule changed, so you got to go back to 2023, the last time they played them. Syracuse has done very well against Clemson overall against the spread. In the last 7 meetings, going back to when they upset Clemson in 2017, inconveniently starting after the horror show of a 2016 game where they were shut out and blown out and Eric Dungy got hurt. But let's get past that. Last 7 meetings, 2017 onward, Syracuse is 5-2 against the spread against Clemson. They have actually covered the last 3 times they have been in this spot, which is a road game against Clemson as big underdogs. 2022, when they were rolling, they were a top 15 team in the country, taking on a top 5 Clemson team with Garrett Schrader at quarterback, trying to stay undefeated. They were actually 14-point dogs in that game in 2022, and man, they should have won that game. Still irks a lot of Syracuse fans watching back the missed calls and all that. 27-21 was the final after Syracuse was up most of the game in Death Valley. 2020 is a game that we don't remember for obvious reasons. That was a very tough season for Orange football. COVID year, one win all year. Maybe put earmuffs on as I say this, but they were 46-point underdogs to Clemson down in Death Valley in 2020. Clemson was the number one team in the country. It was the perfect storm. They were number one team in the country, good, undefeated. Syracuse was as bad as we have seen. The Orange did cover, though, which I don't know if you should really be applauding for that. They were 46-point underdogs, but they did cover. 47-21 was the final of that one in Death Valley. 2018, another game that is memorable for the same reasons the 2022 game is memorable. It was basically the same game as 2022. Syracuse was 25-point underdogs going into that 2018 game, and they lost 27-23. Other games of note, 2017, they were 21.5-point underdogs when they had the upset win inside the Dome. 2019 is a year they did not cover. Again, they're 5-2 in their last 7 meetings at covering against Clemson. 19 was the game that should have been game day if not for Maryland running all over Syracuse in week 2 of the 2019 season. And maybe it's a good thing it wasn't game day because it was a 41-6 shellacking from Clemson. They were 28-point favorites in that game, so they did cover by just a little bit. 2021 is a game that goes under the radar. I almost forgot about it. Gio and I were talking about this earlier in the week. Clemson, 13.5-point favorites in that game, and Syracuse actually had a chance to tie it late. Andre Schmidt missed a field goal. That was in the stretch of games in 2021 where the Orange were losing every game by 3 points, it felt like. They lost that 17-14, but that was a cover inside the Dome. And then the last game they played against Clemson at home, they did not cover. So they were going through a stretch of 5 of 6 covers until last time. Clemson was only a 7-point favorite 2 years ago. That was their worst year in the last 15 seasons. They won just 9 games. They were only 2-2 going into the game inside the Dome, and that was Cade Klubnik starting for Clemson in 2023, the one time he has played the Orange, and Clemson won that game 31-14. So Syracuse has done well in this spot before. They have covered the last 3 times as big underdogs down in Death Valley. They're 5-2 in their last 7 meetings against the spread against Clemson. Of course, just 1 win. They have never won 0-5 in Death Valley, but that is your Clemson series history. That's how we wrap the show tonight. We'll have Adam Terry on tomorrow, and we'll do the whole thing where we talk about Syracuse football again. It'll be a whole lot of fun. 315-437-7644, always the phone number to call, and we will welcome your phone calls tomorrow on the program. 5 to 6 p.m. is the routine going forward. Thanks for listening once again to Drive Time on ESPN Radio and QSportsTalk.com.
This Saturday, join